This is the Core Web Vitals report. And I'm essentially grouping all of the other, say, frameworks or technologies that have a good Core Web Vital score, and I'm comparing them against React and Next.js. And I don't think they go back beyond 2020 because there's somewhere here. Lighthouse data was not available before May 2022. There's somewhere else where they don't have as much data. So if I try and go back further, let's just say like 2013. See if this would even work. Yeah, I don't think it'll apply. So, given the entirety of all the other technologies versus React and Next.js, I'm going to make the case that there is a marked difference, And we could even go like further. Let's go 2024, I don't know, August 1st. Between what everyone else tends to get as a whole, in full, like all of them combined. This is, I believe this is aggregate on mobile, which is the worst offender. But even if we look at desktop, I believe the story is the same. Yeah, it's the same. The good Core Web Vitals, it's almost like a 10% difference all the way across. Now, that doesn't seem like much unless you consider the fact that the entirety of everything else is not that high to begin with. So a 10% difference of a average 30 to 50% score overall, good score, is actually massive. So I think that there's something to be said about like the performance and the ability to have good Core Web Vitals just based on this alone. The median Lighthouse score based on these stats is a bit all over the place. And this is kind of weird. The page weight, I guess it's not that weird if you really think about it. If you look at the page weight, the total page weight of page sizes throughout the web from 2020 to 2024, you can see all the other technologies in aggregate have a pretty like not so terrible rise, albeit a rise. It's weird because Next.js is actually pretty good if you want to kind of hand wave the fact that it starts at almost like double what everything else starts at. And then you look at React and it's like, what the hell are you on? So this is really bad. And Quad, I still have it in my to-do. It's coming up on one of the next streams. These two drops here, there was another one in 2017, which I don't think is capable of being, they don't have data that goes back far enough. But I remember Quad, we were looking at statistics before. And if you go back to 2017, there was another drop or sharp increase, depending on how you look at it, in 2016, 2017. And I have a note to dig into that and figure out if I can, see if I can figure it out. So if we're just looking, the big dip, if we're just looking at like good Core Web Vitals, page weight, and general Lighthouse score, React and Next are not doing well. Now, if you're just looking at are they doing well in these metrics, you can't just point to like just these metrics and go, haha, you shouldn't be using them. But here's what I am gonna say. I haven't got too deeply into this, but I'm going to be, because I've noticed that there was at least one or two bigger tech influencers who said something along the lines on X of, these studies that say like Amazon loses X million dollars per second of page load feels like someone was trying to find a scientific way to like justify whatever they were doing. No. I think I can prove that's not true. I think I have the data to prove that Core Web Vital Statistics, Lighthouse Score, which is kind of like related performance scores, and page weight, these kinds of statistics actually have a huge impact, not just on whether users are going to jump from your website, make that purchase, download that software, pay for whatever it is they're going to pay, read that content, play those ads. Those are all things that factor into these performance scores, where a difference between 1 second and 6 seconds can mean millions or billions of dollars, depending on what company you are and what industry you're in. I do think that's actually very, very much true. But on top of that, these studies do have a scientific basis, and they have been studied from more than just one or two studies. There have actually been several studies primarily based on e-commerce websites, because e-commerce websites, and you could think of like Amazon as like the ultimate e-commerce website, but e-commerce websites in general do see, I've been in the room, they do see massive decreases or increases in user interaction and income when you're doing things like increasing the amount of libraries you use on a page, like for example the shopping cart flow, which means that it takes like 1 second longer for shopping carts to load. Now, on top of the studies, I have actually been in the room where executives have to look at, why did our user retention tank in the last week? And they hire SEO people, and they hire statistics people, and they hire people to look at reports, etc., etc. And the first question that always comes up is, what the hell did you do tech? And then us as the tech team have to go to the executives and say, well, we had to introduce this feature or that feature. We had to do it this way. And point P or P or R in the entire flow of the shopping cart process took a minor hit. And that always ended up being the problem 100% of the time, at least when I was in the room. You as the computer person who writes the code and who works with the executives and so on, you might not see the effects of that, but the users do. And what ends up happening is 99% of these users are not going to pick up the phone or fire off an email or go to an anonymous reporting website or go on X or go on a website like on Reddit or something and post, my shopping cart flow experience really, really sucked on this website, and so I didn't purchase something. What they're going to do is just not use you, which means the only feedback that you can actually count as like actual feedback of what your users are doing is, are we making a base amount of money, and is that money decreasing? Are we holding a base amount of user retention stats, and is that decreasing? And why would that be decreasing? Because you're not going to hear it a vast majority of the time from user feedback. So these things do matter, and even just a doubling in size or even like a quarter in size, these things have a huge impact on your users. And not just that, but if you're looking at like if you're looking at a desktop, the impact might not be as big because it's desktop. Desktops are powerful. But if you look at the mobile, it's even worse. And mobile, it's all over the place. Look at the Lighthouse score on mobile. It's absolutely crazy. And even for Next and React, it's even worse for mobile. And we have a lot of mobile people in a lot of up and coming countries who are left at the table because we seemingly just don't care about them. Who cares about people who have mobile devices that cannot handle the page weight or the amount of time it takes to load something or the amount of bloat that comes with it or anything like that. We have enough money to make it by for now. We're looking for that next quarterly exit. We're going to get there. It's whatever, whatever it is what it is. Who cares? I care. And I think the people who are on their devices in places where they don't have access to the amount of bandwidth and wealth of hardware that other people do, I think they also care too, but they don't tell you by messaging you or messaging randomly and complaining about it. A vast majority of them are going to tell you by not using your shit. So the scientific studies that go on to prove, hey, these people did something, they had a baseline set of income, they had a baseline set of user interaction, they did a thing, it went up or down, that is pretty much the only way that we currently have that is a consistently reasonable way to get feedback on what impact this has on your users. And you know that it's also true, it's intuitively true because you all do it too. When was the last time you came across a security vulnerability issue, for example, on average, and you went and actually reported it? When was the last time your application crashed and you actually went and reported it? When was the last time you were going through the checkout experience and you actually went and reported it? And even if you can say, yeah, but I've done it before, how many times do you do it in comparison to how many times you've experienced a failure? And we can see that too with cybersecurity issues, where people will go for a very long time seeing a problem on their app, on a website, on a piece of software, and it's very clearly a security issue. Someone shipped code that had a security issue in it, and it was like blaring in people's faces, a mass amount of users' faces, hey, there's a problem here, hey, there's a problem here. Nobody says anything because it's like, well, we're just so desensitized to the shitification of the entire industry. Why should we say anything? And then it's discovered 6 months later that there was a security hole where all your privacy was sold off to some company in some other country that doesn't give a shit about any of these things and is perfectly willing to jump through whatever hoops they have to jump through or just completely remove them to do the shit that you won't because you like to feel good at night with your comfy little developer experience blanket. These people are not going to be outspoken, complaining about all the issues they see. It is unfortunately your responsibility and my responsibility to assume that these things are shit and do something about them. And these kind of metrics for React and Next, especially when compared to the entirety of all other frameworks, this to me isn't acceptable. This to me is saying, I do not give a shit about the users on my system. I've been conditioned to not trust data sharing, so I turn off all crash report stuff. Yeah.